All right, headbangers, listen up. This is Dee Snider. Yeah, you know me, and I am blowing it up on MetalgodZradiO. Metal Gods!
Yes, you are, in fact, blowing it up on MetalgodZradiO. Dee Snider, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing great, man. My album, Leave a Scar, is finally coming out. People, critics and writers and radio people are hearing it, and the reaction has been great. And some of the initial couple tracks have been released, and the reaction to those have been great, too. So it's exciting after the long process.
And how long of a process was this new album?
I'd have to say 6 months, which really isn't that long. But, from the time, maybe longer, from the time I decided that I wanted to do another record, started the creative process, writing the songs, and then just the whole soup to nuts.
How challenging was this writing and recording process during, obviously, the state of the world that we live in now?
Well, on that front, fortunately, COVID picked a good time to come. And I say, well, is there ever really a good time? Well, imagine if this was 20 years ago. There would be no school. Kids would just been uneducated for a year. There'd be no work from home. There would be all these things that we're doing through technology we can do because technology was ready for this. So recording has been done remotely and often done remotely for several years now. My last album, For the Love of Metal, some of it I recorded in the studio in Connecticut, but other songs I had to record vocals in L.A. while Jamie Johnson, my producer, and my engineer were listening in real time, hearing it exactly as it was being recorded, note for note, and giving me feedback immediately without any delay or anything like that. So the technology was up to.
Is it the first single? Is the track with George Corpse Grinder? Is that right?
No, the first track we released was called "I Gotta Rock Again," and it was really one of the songs that inspired me to do the record. I actually had told my band and my family and management that I wasn't going to record or perform anymore at the end of 2019. But then COVID hit. The world, took a crap in its own bed, and on so many levels. And I felt I had this need to say something. And I hadn't written any music. I'd been involved in the writing process since 1995, 25 years. I'd sat it out. So, so I just said, I realized, and one of the first things was a thought that, and I work with song titles. That's how I build songs from there. And I just was thinking to myself, I said, man, I got to rock again. This was like around the middle of 2020. And I laughed. I said, boy, if there was ever a Dee Snider song title, that's it. Mr. I Want to Rock, You Can't Stop Rock, I Believe in Rock, Bad Boys of Rock, I'm always rocking. And then I wrote it down, I looked at it, I said, you know what? Probably the whole world is thinking this right now. Everybody's thinking, I got to rock again. So that was the first song we wrote and created. That was the first single released. The one with Corpse Grinder was this follow-up lyric video for.
How did that come about with George Corpse Grinder of Cannibal Corpse?
Well, my producer is Jamie Johnson of Hatebreed, and he produced my last album, too. This is the first time I used the same producer 2 records in a row. And Jamie has shown me the path of righteousness, where Dee Snider fits in the contemporary metal scene. And my last metal album really reconnected me with the audience, which was great with the contemporary metal audience. But believe it or not, it was my idea to bring in George Corpse Grinder Fisher. And when I brought it up, when I said, hey, we should get George Fisher on this track, Jamie said, George Fisher who? Thinking I was referring to some like 70s bass player, from the band Free or something. I said, Corpse Grinder, man. And Jamie calls me OGD. He says, you always want it to be heavier. I always want it to be heavier. He's the one who holds me back and says, do not disconnect from your legacy because you want to bring those fans with you. So you want to try and bring some of them with you. So that was my idea. And George, yes, apparently No one from my world even acknowledges death metal singing, let alone asks a death metal singer to perform.
That's a beautiful thing that the mind is, I think, is always open until people close it themselves. Is that right?
You know what? Wow, very wise. People, is this Yoda? Is that you? If you said that a little word, well, closed it is the mind before you open it. You know, let's refer. No, but seriously, that it's when people from my generation, very difficult to get them to change, to grow. Once they get to a certain point, they sort of set in, and a lot, you hear it all the time. Like, there's no good music anymore. This idea that music died after they got out of high school. And I fortunately, I'm as Jamie calls me, OGD. I'm the day one heavy metal guy with the first Sabbath album, first Zep album, and all my kids are metalheads. They've kept me connected, going to shows with them, playing the music, so I'm very into what's happening in the world of metal, and I'm really happy that Jamie said nobody ever, I'm happy that I reached across the aisle, so to speak, to use a political term, and because I remember I had a fan say to me, I really don't like that death metal stuff, but it was pretty cool. It sounded really good on your song. So I'm like, you know what? It's all metal. You don't got to love it all, but it all has a place. And I want people to open their minds a little bit and to new ideas. And I'll tell you what, old metal fans, it is a fountain of youth. Don't go lighter with age, get heavier, and it will keep.
The first time I saw you live was on the Stay Hungry tour when you opened for Iron Maiden, and I think I saw you, I believe you played in Long Beach with them on their.
Oh, yeah. That's okay. First of all, Zoran, that's when tours were tours and men were men. Okay? I mean, there was no hair metal. It was just metal. In 84, when we toured with Maiden, it had not been branded hair metal. So Motley Crue toured with Ozzy, and, that tour was one of the great tours. 5 nights sold out at the Long Beach Arena. And if you remember, we were the opening band. It was packed. When we hit the stage, it was packed. Usually the opening band, people show up late. No. Everybody was there to see Twisted. They were there to see Maiden. It was one of the great concerts.
Iron Maiden is one of those bands that has not really been afraid to bring out good opening bands. I know that there are some bands that restrict. They don't want, they don't want.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Dio, and I love Dio, and I love Ronnie, but when we toured with Dio, they wouldn't move any of their equipment, so we were forced onto the lip of the stage in front of the lights, so you couldn't see us. We got no spotlights. They reduced the PA. That's the way a lot of those old bands did it. Bands like Black Sabbath, on the other hand, mad dope props. You look through their touring history, and Ozzy for that matter too, and they're fearless. They had Aerosmith open up for them. They had Van Halen open up for them. I saw Jay Giles' band back when they were a boogie band open, and after Jay Giles had the place, because Sabbath is all dirgy, Jay Giles is the party, and after they had people partying, half the arena walked out on Sabbath. Not, of course, Sabbath, but because they didn't want to go dirge after they had just partied for an hour. So, but Sabbath's always been fearless, presenting the best bands opening up for them.
I saw U2 open for Jay Giles.
U2? Wow.
U2.
There's a combination. Yeah. There's a combination.
Yeah, they're from your area, is that right?
Well, I grew up in New York. Jay Giles from the Boston area. So, but they, and then funny, Jay Giles was one of those bands that had 2 lives. They had an early life, they were just this boogie band, which I loved. I used to play Jay Giles songs just as I got out of high school. Looking for a Love. First I Look at the Purse, Hard Driving Man. Then there was the new Jay Giles, whatever that thing, Freeze Frame, and Love Stinks. That was like a second verse.
Several bands have had second lives. I know that Aerosmith is a band that has had a second life.
Yeah, I feel that they always kept attached to their old one. I think a better band is the Tubes. The Tubes have, they had that whole White Punks on Dope, Mondo Bondage, the Fee Waybill wearing crazy costumes thing, and then all of a sudden they came out like years later and with hit pop songs, and they weren't doing the costume thing or any of that weird stuff anymore. That was bad. Scorpions. They had, I was a Scorpions fan back in the 70s. They had a whole thing where people realized that they, including an amazing live album, and then they came out back with a second life with the Blackout record, and and all of a sudden there was like a rebirth for them. So yeah, it's strange that the bands that are really good, they sometimes recreate themselves, reinvent themselves, and look at Whitesnake. They were like almost this blues-based metal hard rock band with former members of Deep Purple, and a whole different lineup, and Coverdale, and then he comes back years later with this pretty boy, big-haired band, and here I go again, actually playing that song that he recorded years before with the original band, but now with
that kind of thing just doesn't happen anymore.
You know what? I can't say for sure on that, but if you tell me, you're the radio guy. My radio right now for me, well, you know what? I like to think I'm doing it. I know people in the metal community, the newer metal. Look, the last two records I put out are contemporary. They've got their feet. My feet are still from where I come from. But at the same time, very new sounding, very fresh sounding. And I'm seeing myself on all these Spotify metal lists. Liquid Metal and Sirius XM, like in there with the heaviest of bands. And Dee Snider at 66, or as I like to say, 66.6, the most metal of ages. I am suddenly like, I've got new, younger metal fans who are getting turned on to me. So because my stuff sounds fresh and new.
Speaking of Twisted Sister, obviously, running your own show is always the better option. Being in that sort of a band setting, which can be sort of difficult to have to, listen to somebody else's opinion, or maybe your opinion doesn't get the love that you expect it to.
Well, for the record, me and the Twisted guys, we retired in 2016. We're friends. We talk all the time. As a matter of fact, I've got a live stream event happening on the 29th. If you go to people who want to hear some music from Dee Snider, new stuff and old stuff, with my new project in front of 1,000 vaccinated and tested fans, shoulder to shoulder. It's just old school as hell. You go to metaldepartment.tv, metaldepartment.tv for the live stream on the 29th, and then it's going to be running for about a month, repeating, so you can check it out after if you can't make it on the 29th. But Mark the Animal Mendoza, my bass player, he shows up, and we do a classic Twisted song called Under the Blade together. And it's a very heavy song, but we're just smiling ear to ear just to be. But the thing I miss is the gang mentality. Us against the world kind of thing. Twisted Sister was famously had our Twisted Sister colors, we call them, motorcycle jackets we wore. Black Label, they got it from us. Bon Jovi, on their album cover, they got it from Twisted. They're all Twisted fans. And so we used to walk around like we felt like we were a gang. And, and sometimes you went into a new town. You were grossly outnumbered. And it was nice to have your boys standing by you knew.
How apprehensive were you with the vaccine and the recommendations from people that would say so-called professionals?
You better pay attention to me, man. Listen to me loud and clear. I am pro-vax. COVID is real, and my biggest joy right now, you want to hear the real truth, is that by 2022, I figure all the anti-vaxxers will have died. So we'll be left with a world of intelligent people who believe in science. How about that? Do I have an opinion? You do not want to go down this road with Dee Snider because I am as strong and as fearless and a gun carrier. Okay, so this album is based on that. I mean, this album is inspired by what's going on in the world right now, and a lot of it comes from this world, the stupid world that we live in. And a song called Stand, which the title of the album is called Leave a Scar, okay, is about telling the people, the people in the center, the true majority, to wake up. Stop listening to those minorities on the extreme left and extreme right. They're the loudest, most bullying voices in the room. They think because they got 10,000 people in their Facebook group, they're a movement. You're not a movement, a-hole. You're a damn parade. So march, wave your flags, and shut the F up. It's time for the true majority, the 70%ers in the center. They lean a little left, they lean a little right, but they're rational thinking people. Time to take a stand, make sure your voice is heard, and take control of this world again. Because it's sitting on the sidelines ain't working.
Are there any current American politicians that give you any hope or possibly inspire you?
Yeah, rational thinking human beings like Joe Biden. Yeah, 100%. Ted Cruz makes me want to take my own life, but I won't do it because I'd have to stay around just to annoy the F out of him. Okay, so so there are people, if you're a thinking, rational person that doesn't have their head in a hole, like I watch all the news networks. Okay, that's where I draw my opinions. I listen. I watch Fox. I listen. I want to hear what other opinions are. I want to hear what's going on, and then I make my conclusions. That's really the intelligent route. You just try. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I've always been independent, and I voted for Republicans. I have voted for Democrats. I have voted for independents. I rode in a motorcycle procession for John McCain. I led a procession with John McCain because I was a McCain supporter. So I am not left, right. I'm intelligently. Like I said, I'm a concealed carrier, but I stand for women's right to choose. So I'm like one of those people, and I know for a fact the majority of people are. Sometimes they're a little left, sometimes they're a little right. They're trying to make the right choice. Life is a bitch. It's tough to make the right choice. The world ain't black and white.
Metal, 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 gods!